I was breaking up an old bathtub on my driveway when something fell out of it, wrapped in plastic, cash, a cheap phone I had never seen before, and a folded piece of paper with my own name on it. I'm 62 years old. I've been married to the same woman for 19 years. And in the next 10 seconds, I realized she had been planning to take everything from me. My name is Walter Hayes. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. And what I'm about to tell you actually started as a small surprise for my wife. A brand new bathtub to replace the old one she always complained about. That's it. That was the whole plan. I had no idea that Bathtub had been hiding something inside it for months, maybe longer. If you've been with me on this channel before, you know I take my time with these stories. I let them breathe, because what happened to me could happen to anyone watching this right now. Your neighbor, your father, your husband, maybe even you. So pour yourself something to drink, get comfortable, and listen carefully, because the smallest sound, a soft rustle of plastic against broken porcelain, can change a man's entire life in a single afternoon. And mine changed at exactly 2:17 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in July. I didn't even pick the bundle up right away. I just stood there in my own driveway, staring at that cracked tub like it had whispered something at me from the inside. You spend 19 years in a house, you think you know every floorboard, every drawer that sticks, every wall that creaks, when the AC kicks on at 3 in the morning. That bathtub had been sitting in my master bathroom longer than my marriage. Cream-colored, chipped at the edges, a faint rust-ring no amount of bleach could lift. Karen used to mention it every couple of months, said it made the whole bathroom feel old, said walking into it made her feel old, so I figured I'd surprise her. That was all this was supposed to be. A surprise. Karen had flown out to San Diego 3 days earlier for a corporate training session. She works in claims processing for a regional insurance firm. Numbers all day. Spreadsheets. Subrogation files. The kind of work where every comma matters. She'd been wound tight for months. Coming home late. Phone always face down on the counter. I figured when she walked back through that door, it'd be nice if just one thing in her world felt easier. I'm not the kind of man who buys roses on a Tuesday. Never have been. But I fix things. I always have. Broken faucet, busted disposal, leaking water heater. That's how I show love. So I drove the truck down to the hardware store on Camelback, picked out a clean white soaker tub, and spent the morning shutting off valves and unscrewing nuts that hadn't moved since the late 90s. It took longer than I wanted. My lower back was already barking at me by 11. By the time I had that old tub free, I should have called somebody. Should have called my neighbor Ramirez 2 doors down. He would have come over in a heartbeat. But I didn't. That's on me. I dragged it through the hallway slow, careful not to scrape the baseboards, then out through the carport and onto the driveway. I remember adjusting my grip, thinking just one more step, thinking I had it, and then it slipped. It hit the hot concrete with this awful flat crack that echoed off the garage door. The whole side of it split open like a peanut shell, not a clean break, jagged, ugly. The kind of break that makes your stomach turn just from the sound. And right after that crack came the rustle. Soft, plastic on porcelain. Something slid out from a hollow space inside the lip of the tub. Now let me pause here for a second, because I want you to picture this. A man in his 60s, the Arizona sun beating down at 104 degrees, sweat in his eyes, standing alone in his driveway, holding a sledgehammer, watching something that should not exist slide out of a bathtub he installed himself 2 decades ago. If I were Walter in that moment, I think I would have just laughed, out of pure shock, because the brain doesn't know what to do with something like that. It refuses. At first I thought it was insulation, maybe a wad of construction trash from when the house was built back in the 80s. But the more I looked, the wronger it felt. It was wrapped too tight, tucked too deep, placed. I set the hammer down on the concrete and crouched, my knees popping like always. There was a smell coming off it, faint, like old paper, like the inside of a safety deposit box. If you've ever opened a wallet that's been sitting in a drawer for 10 years, you know exactly what I mean. I picked up the bundle. It was heavier than it looked. The plastic crinkled in my fingers as I peeled the layers back. Inside was a smaller pouch, black, zippered. The kind of cheap nylon pouch you'd grab off a drugstore end cap. And that's when my chest got tight. Because this wasn't junk, this wasn't forgotten, this was hidden. I unzipped it slowly, and the first thing I saw was money. Stacks of cash, not bank banded, just rubber banded. Hundreds, mostly. Maybe $7,000–8,000. I didn't count it right then. I didn't need to. Underneath the money was a phone, a flip-style cheap thing. No case, no personalization. The kind of phone you buy with cash at a gas station and never register. And underneath the phone, a single folded sheet of printer paper, typed, not handwritten. The very top of the page had one word on it, timeline. I sank back onto my heels right there in the driveway, the hot concrete burning through my jeans. My hands felt cold. In Phoenix. In July. They felt cold. Now look, I want to be honest with you. If I had been Walter in that exact moment, my first instinct would have been to throw all of it in the trash and pretend I never saw it. Because some part of you knows. Before your brain catches up, your gut already knows. But Walter, to his credit, did the harder thing. He kept reading. There were dates listed down the left side of the page. Recent ones, not years ago, weeks, days, and next to each date were short clipped notes. Re-engage after argument. Push refinance angle again. Keep tone supportive. I read that last line 3 times. Keep tone supportive. Further down. Move funds after paperwork clears. Confirm separate account live. Confirm Walter's signature on package. And at the bottom, 2 words. Final step. Nothing else. Just that. I felt something settle inside my chest. Not a sharp pain. Something heavier. Something that felt like furniture being moved into a room I didn't want furnished. The dates lined up. They lined up perfectly with conversations I half remembered. Karen across the kitchen table 6 weeks ago, sliding a folder toward me. Talking about retirement timing. Saying we needed to be smart, be proactive, lock in a better rate before they climbed again. I could see her now, in my memory, reaching across the placemats and resting her hand on top of mine. That gentle touch she always used when she wanted me to listen. "This is for us, Walt," she'd said. "We need to plan." And I had nodded. Because 19 years buys you that. You stop questioning the person across the table. You just trust. I looked down at the timeline again, and it hit me right in the sternum. This wasn't an idea. This was a script, a sequence, a plan with phases. I sat in that driveway long enough that the shadow of the carport crept across the cracked tub, inch by inch, until the broken edge was in shade and the rest of it was still in burning sun. Eventually, I picked up the burner phone and pressed the power button. It came on. No pin, no fingerprint, nothing. And that might have been the worst part. Because that meant whoever hid this never expected anyone else to find it. Never. I didn't open anything yet. I wasn't ready. I just sat there on the busted edge of that tub, elbows on my knees, staring at the seam where the porcelain had split. Thinking about all the nights Karen had brushed her teeth in that bathroom. All the mornings we had stood at the same mirror without saying much, just being 2 people who knew each other. And the whole time, this had been 6 inches away. I want you to sit with that for a second. 6 inches. Not in some bank deposit box across town. Not in some storage unit behind a gas station. In our bathroom, inside the tub she stood in every single morning. If you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, there's no way I'd miss something like that, I gotta be honest with you. Most of us would. Because we don't go looking for betrayal in our own bathrooms. We just don't. I folded the paper back up, tucked everything back in the pouch, set it beside me, and I stared at the concrete for what felt like an hour. The thought that kept coming back wasn't why. Not yet. The thought was simpler. This wasn't something old. This was something still moving. I didn't open the phone again until the sun started dropping behind the Estrella Mountains. I carried everything inside first. You don't sit out in a Phoenix driveway after dark with a stack of cash on your lap. Folks here are friendly, but they notice. Mrs. Donovan across the street has nothing to do all day but water her cactus garden and watch the block. I set the pouch on the kitchen island and just stood over it, almost like I was waiting for it to apologize. It didn't. So I made coffee. Black, the way I've drunk it for 40 years. My hands didn't shake making it. That surprised me. I think the routine is what kept me steady. You boil water. You measure grounds. You pour. You don't fall apart. Then I sat at the breakfast bar, pulled the burner phone closer, and turned it on again. Plain home screen, generic icons, messages, calls. That was about it. Almost worse that way. Almost easier if there had been some weird app or password protection. This was just clean. I tapped messages. There was one thread that mattered, saved under 2 letters. MR. I tapped it. The most recent message had come in that very morning. From MR, schedule still good for Monday. From Karen. Yes, he's been more relaxed since I got back. I'll close it then. I read that twice. He was me. I scrolled up. From MR. Don't push too hard this weekend. Pacing matters. From Karen. I know. 19 years. He trusts me completely. I leaned back on the stool. I want to tell you my heart was pounding, but it wasn't. It was the opposite. Everything got slow. Everything got quiet. Like the volume on the world had been turned down. From Karen. If he hesitates Monday, I'll bring up the retirement projection again. That always lands. From MR. Good. Keep tone supportive. Always supportive. That phrase again. Keep tone supportive. The exact wording from the printed timeline. Word for word. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. From MR. After signature, we move funds within 48 hours. New account already verified. Verified. Already verified. I thought about the joint statements I'd been glancing at the past couple months. I'd noticed a couple of small transfers I didn't fully recognize. Numbers that didn't sit quite right in the memo lines. I'd waved it off. Thought maybe she'd reorganize something. Now, I wasn't waving anything off. Let me say something here, and I want you to hear me. Because if you're a man, or a woman, of a certain age, and your spouse handles most of the finances, please listen. The moment something doesn't add up, even a little, you owe yourself 5 minutes to look. Not to accuse, just to look. Walter didn't look, and I'm not blaming him. I'm telling you, most of us wouldn't have either. I set the phone down and rubbed both hands over my face. 19 years. You don't burn 19 years to the ground over a few text messages. So I stood up, walked to the hallway closet where we kept the filing cabinet, pulled open the second drawer. Mortgage, insurance, old tax returns. I had organized all of it myself a decade ago, my own little system. And that's when I saw it. A folder missing. Not obvious. You'd only know if you were the one who put the system together. The refinance packet Karen had brought home 3 weeks ago. The one I'd glanced at, and then placed neatly behind the homeowner's policy. Gone. I closed the drawer slow and quiet, like the cabinet had ears, and I went back to the kitchen and picked up the burner phone again, scrolled further into the older messages. From Karen. He asked again why now and not next year. From MR. What did you tell him? From Karen. Rates. I told him rates. He nodded and stopped asking. Nodded and stopped asking. That's how she described me to him. A man who nods. A man who stops asking. I sat with that for a long time. And here's the thing I want you to understand. Walter wasn't just hurt. He was being inventoried. He was being described, in real time, to a stranger. Like a problem to be managed. If you've ever been talked about behind your back, even in a small way, you know how that hollows you out. Now multiply that by 19 years. Multiply that by the woman who slept beside you. I set the phone down and stared out the kitchen window above the sink. The sky over the desert was that deep tangerine pink phoenix gets right before night. Cicadas going in the oleander hedge. Somebody's pool pump kicking on next door. Everything outside looked normal. Inside that little phone, nothing was. I reached for my coffee. It had gone lukewarm. I drank it anyway. Then I picked up my own phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in maybe 2 years. Frank Delgado. We'd worked construction together back when I was still doing concrete pours in the 90s. He left the trades and went into Phoenix PD. Did 22 years on the job. Retired detective bureau. Quiet guy. Reads people like menus. He picked up on the third ring. Walt. Everything all right? I almost said yes. The lie was right there in my throat, easy as breathing. Then I looked at the burner phone on the counter. No, Frank, I said. Not really. There was a pause on his end. Not a long one. just enough to know he was already shifting gears. "Talk to me, brother," so I told him. "Not all of it. Just enough. The tub, the pouch, the phone, the timeline." He didn't interrupt. Not once. When I read him the line about keep tone supportive, I heard him exhale slow, the kind of exhale that means someone is putting puzzle pieces together they've seen before. "Walt, listen to me," he said. "You sure of what you're reading, word for word?" "I'm holding it right now, Frank." Another pause. Longer. "That's not random," he said, "and it's not old. Somebody wrote that recently. Somebody with a goal. I already knew that. Hearing it from a 30-year cop just made it heavier." "What do you think it is?" I asked. He took his time answering. "Walt, at our age, people don't have affairs for the bedroom anymore. They have affairs for the exit." I closed my eyes. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means somebody's planning to leave you with as little as possible," he said. "And they're being patient about it. That patience is the part that scares me." Now I want to stop right here, because Frank said something in that phone call that I think every single one of you needs to write down. Affairs at 60 are different from affairs at 30. At 30, it's chaos. At 60, it's accounting. Frank told Walter to do nothing. "Not yet. Don't confront her," he said. "Don't change your behavior. Don't even sigh different at dinner. You confront her now, all that evidence walks out the door in a purse. The phone disappears. The paperwork disappears. You'll look like a paranoid old man. So what do? You watch. You document. You get a lawyer. A good one, not a referral from a friend. A real divorce attorney who's seen financial fraud. I know one. Susan Keller. She's downtown. I'll text you her number." We hung up after that. The house felt different. Not haunted. Just changed. Like the temperature had dropped 2 degrees and I was the only one feeling it. I want to say something to you here. From one human being to another. If you ever find yourself in Walter's shoes, your first instinct is going to be to scream. To call her. To throw the phone against the wall. Don't. I know it's against every fiber of who you are. But Frank was right. Composure is the only weapon you have left in that moment. Use it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the same bed I'd slept in for 19 years, staring at a ceiling fan I'd installed myself, listening to a desert wind kick up against the bedroom window. Around 3 in the morning I got up, stood at the kitchen sink, drank water out of a glass Karen had brought home from a vacation in Sedona. I picked up the burner phone again and started looking for patterns. Not just words this time. Timing. There were short calls between them. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Spread out over weeks. None at midnight. None at suspicious hours. Lunchtime. Late afternoon. Right after work. Normal windows. And that told me everything. Because normal windows mean they weren't sneaking around emotionally. They were operating. I went to my laptop and typed in the contact name. MR didn't help. But the messages mentioned the firm twice. And Dallas. So I searched. Financial consultant. Dallas. Fiduciary. After about 20 minutes of clicking, I found him. Michael Reeves. Independent advisor. Mid-50s. Salt and pepper hair. The kind of stock photo smile that sells annuities to retirees. There was an old article from a Dallas paper. Something about a former client filing a complaint over unauthorized portfolio reallocation. No charges. No conviction. Just questions that never quite got answered. Of course, it fit too neatly. I closed the laptop, sat there in the dark, and I thought about what kind of man hides money inside a bathtub, and what kind of woman lives above it for years. I called Frank back at sunrise, told him the name. He went quiet. The kind of quiet that means he was writing something down. "Reeves," he said. "I've heard that name through old contacts. He's not a criminal. He's something worse. He's a system guy. He knows exactly where the line is and he never quite crosses it. He's involved with my wife. A long beat. Walt, this isn't a fling. You understand that, right? I'm starting to. This is asset transfer, disguised as a marriage exit. You refinance. You pull equity out of the house. That money goes into an account she controls with him as advisor of record. By the time the paperwork clears probate years from now, you're a renter in your own retirement. What do? You call Susan Keller this morning. You don't wait. So I did. And later that morning I drove down to our credit union over on Thomas Road. Didn't make a scene, didn't demand anything. Just asked, casually, about any pending applications attached to the house. The teller, sweet young woman, started to answer, then froze and smiled and said she'd need both of us present. That hesitation was the answer. I drove home and went straight to Karen's closet. Not snooping for laundry receipts, just checking. Her clothes were there, her shoes, her jewelry box on the dresser. I opened it. Top tray, normal. Bottom compartment, empty. There had been something there. A small velvet pouch I'd given her on our 10th anniversary. Gone. I closed the box, sat on the edge of our bed, looked at the framed picture on her nightstand. The two of us at the Hoover Dam, maybe 12 years ago. Wind in her hair. My arm around her shoulder. We looked solid. Real. I set the picture face down, and I said something out loud to the empty room. Who are you? Not angry. Just genuinely asking. Because the woman in those messages wasn't the woman in that picture. Or maybe she was. And I'd just spent 19 years not paying attention. Now here's where I want to slow down for you, because this is the part of the story that hits me hardest. The realization that the betrayal didn't start last month. It started a long time before the timeline was written. Look at the very top of that printed page, above the dates. There was one tiny line in smaller font that I almost missed. Re-engage prior contact. Re-engage. That word knocked the wind out of me. Because re-engage means you knew them before. Re-engage means there's history. Re-engage means whatever this was had been paused, not invented. I called Frank. Frank. They knew each other before. The plan says re-engage. A long breath on his end. Then this isn't betrayal, Walt. This is a return. She didn't fall into something. She went back to it. I'm not confronting her, I said. Good. Let her come back to Phoenix. Let her walk into Monday's meeting thinking she's holding all the cards. You let her play it out. Karen flew back into Sky Harbor that Thursday afternoon. I was standing at the kitchen island when I heard the rental car pull into the driveway. Same little double tap on the brakes she's done for 19 years. Some habits don't lie, even when the person does. I had everything put away. The pouch, the burner, the timeline. The folder of evidence I'd been quietly building with Susan Keller all week. I'd taken every single message off that phone, photographed it, backed it up, time-stamped it. Notarized copies sat in a safe deposit box across town in my sister's name. The new bathtub still sat in the garage. I hadn't installed it. Felt wrong to. Front door opened. Walt? In the kitchen, Hon. She rolled her suitcase in behind her. Hair up in that loose clip she always wears on travel days. Lightweight cardigan. Same Karen. That was the worst part of the whole week. How identical she looked to the woman I had loved. She set her bag down, came over, kissed my cheek the way she always did. Quick, familiar, automatic. How was the flight? I asked. Long, she said, smiling. San Diego is San Diego. Too many breakout sessions, not enough coffee. I nodded. Sounds about right. There was a pause. Then her eyes flicked toward the hallway. You haven't started on the bathroom? Got the old one out? I said. New one's in the garage. Figured I'd do it this weekend, just for a second. Her shoulders relaxed. Just a flicker. If I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed it entirely. No rush, she said. No rush at all. We had dinner that night like nothing was different. Grilled chicken, some rice, salad. The fork would clink against her plate. She'd take a sip of water. Set the glass down too carefully. Her phone vibrated face down on the table. She didn't even glance at it. And I knew exactly which phone was buzzing, because in my pocket, the burner I'd been carrying all week buzzed too. Same instant. Different pattern. I didn't react. I reached for the salt. After dinner, she asked if I'd thought any more about the refinance. I have, I said. I think we should sit down with somebody and look at the numbers. Her whole body softened. She tried to hide it. She couldn't quite. Actually, she said, I already reached out to a friend from the San Diego conference. He does this for a living. Specializes in retirement-age homeowners. Michael Reeves. He's flying in Monday. Monday works, I said. She studied my face, looking for the crack, the doubt, the hesitation. I gave her none. Just a conversation, right? She said. Yeah, I said. Just a conversation. She smiled, and for a moment, It almost looked real. After she went to bed, I sat in the dark living room and called Susan Keller's cell. "We're set for Monday," I told her. "You're sure you want to do it this way, Walter?" "I'm sure. Then I'll be there. And Walt, you don't say a single word more than we rehearsed. Not one." "Got it." Monday morning I woke up before the alarm. Karen was still asleep beside me. Breathing slow, turned away. For a long minute I just listened. 19 years of listening to the same person breathe in the same bed. Whatever else was true about her, that part had been real for a long time. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe I was the one assigning meaning where there was just routine. We didn't talk much on the drive downtown. She checked her phone twice. The conference room at the credit union was small. Glass walls on one side. Long table, 4 chairs. Michael Reeves stood up the moment we walked in. Tall. Pressed shirt. Smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. The exact stock photo from the article. "Walter," he said. "Real pleasure." I shook his hand. "Likewise." He turned to my wife. "Karen, good to see you again." Again. There was that word. I didn't react. We sat down. He started right in. Smooth, practiced. Numbers floating across the table. Loan-to-value ratios. Equity extraction. Rate locks. Karen nodded along, adding little supportive comments at exactly the right beats. Just like the script. He slid a folder across to me. "Thick. Heavy. Just preliminary figures, Walt. No pressure today." I put my hand flat on top of the folder. Didn't open it. I leaned back, took a breath, reached into my jacket pocket, and I set the burner phone on the table between us. The room went very still, not loud, just still. Karen's eyes dropped to the phone, then up to me. "Walt, what is that?" Her voice was steady. I gave her credit for that. I reached into my other pocket and put the folded timeline next to the phone, smoothed it open with the side of my hand, and I said the line I had practiced in the bathroom mirror for 4 mornings straight. "You forgot this in the bathtub?" Karen. For one long second nothing moved, and then I saw it. Her face didn't crack, it calculated. Michael's eyes flicked once between the phone and the page. He knew. Of course he knew. Karen leaned back slowly in her chair. "You went through my things." Not a question. "It fell out, Karen," I said gently. "When the tub broke, it all fell out." Silence. Michael cleared his throat. "I think there may be some confusion here." I cut him off without raising my voice. "Mr. Reeves, the messages are still on the phone. The dates match. The transfer instructions match. The verified account number matches. We can keep going if you want." Karen looked at me differently then, like she was seeing me for the first time in 19 years. "How much did you read?" "All of it," she exhaled. And to my surprise, she nodded once, like a woman closing a chapter. "Okay," she said quietly. Michael shifted. "Karen, we should." "It's done, Michael," she said, not even looking at him. He already knows. "Stop talking." That was the most honest sentence I'd heard from her in months. I slid a second folder across the table. "This is what's been documented," I said. "Messages, dates, bank inquiries,